"Don't hurt her, sell her to me," growled the weathered cowboy, reins slack in his calloused hand. When he saw the trembling black girl beaten by her cruel stepmother in the dust of the frontier street, to the townsfolk of Bitter Creek, the girl was nothing but a burden in rags, abandoned, worthless, destined for a lifetime of servitude beneath hands that would never show mercy. Into this silence stepped the mysterious drifter, an outsider carrying secrets darker than his weathered coat, yet offering something no one expected: dignity where others saw only property. But the girl harbors a dangerous gift that could expose every lie this town was built on, and the stepmother who claims to own her guards secrets worth killing for. Will this stranger's intervention save an innocent soul, or unleash truths that will destroy them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. Clara Mee's knuckles were raw from scrubbing the general store floor for the third time that morning. The wooden boards never seemed clean enough for Martha Hensley. Nothing ever was. "You missed a spot." Martha's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Her pale finger pointed to an invisible stain near the counter. "Start over." Clara Mee bit back her response. Speaking only made things worse. She dipped the brush into the bucket of cold water and began again. Her knees ached against the hard wood, but she'd learned to ignore pain years ago. The bell above the door chimed as Mrs. Patterson entered. The widow smiled kindly at Clara Mee before approaching the counter. Martha's demeanor shifted instantly, her harsh expression melting into practiced sweetness. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson. How can I help you today?" Clara Mee continued scrubbing, invisible as always. She'd grown used to being furniture in the presence of real customers. Her stomach growled, but breakfast wouldn't come until all chores were finished, if they were finished to Martha's satisfaction. "Just some flour and sugar, Martha. My granddaughter is visiting next week." "How wonderful. Children bring such joy." Clara Mee's jaw tightened. Martha spoke of children like she understood love, like she hadn't spent 15 years crushing every spark of hope from the girl under her roof. Mrs. Patterson's coins clinked on the counter. As Martha counted them, her fingers brushed against Clara Mee's hand, reaching for a dropped cloth. The contact sent lightning through Clara Mee's skull. Images flashed behind her eyes. Grief, loneliness, a wooden box hidden beneath floorboards. Clara Mee jerked her hand away, gasping. The visions always came without warning, always left her dizzy and confused. Martha said they were fits sent by the devil to punish her wickedness. "What's wrong with that girl?" Mrs. Patterson whispered. "Don't mind her. She has spells sometimes. Doctor says it's nothing contagious." Clara Mee's cheeks burned. She focused on the floor, scrubbing harder. The episodes had started after her parents died, though she barely remembered them now. Martha said thinking about the past only made the fits worse. After Mrs. Patterson left, Martha's mask fell away. "Clean yourself up. Mr. Jameson is coming to look at you today." Clara Mee's blood turned to ice. She knew that name. Jameson ran cattle 20 miles east. His hired hands whispered stories about disappeared workers and unmarked graves. "You're 17 now. Time you learn to earn your keep properly." "I work every day. I do everything you ask." Martha's hand cracked across Clara Mee's cheek. The familiar sting brought tears she refused to shed. "Don't talk back to me. You eat my food, sleep under my roof. You owe me everything." Clara Mee touched her burning cheek. Through the window, she watched normal families going about their morning routines. Children laughed in the street while their mothers smiled. She wondered what that felt like. "Mr. Jameson needs workers for his ranch. Strong backs, willing hands. You'll be perfect." The words hit Clara Mee like physical blows. She'd heard what happened to workers at Jameson's ranch. They arrived hopeful and left broken, if they left at all. "Please, I'll work harder. I'll do anything. You'll do what I tell you, like always." Clara Mee's hands shook as she continued scrubbing. The floorboards blurred through her tears. 15 years of servitude, and this was her reward. This was her future. The morning dragged on. Martha found fault with every task. The shelves weren't straight enough. The windows had streaks. The counter needed more polish. Each criticism came with increasing anger, as if Clara Mee's very existence offended her. By noon, a small crowd had gathered outside. Word traveled fast in Bitter Creek. Martha grabbed Clara Mee's wrist and dragged her toward the door. "Time for everyone to see what happens to thieves. I didn't steal anything. A whole sack of flour is missing. Who else could have taken it?" Clara Mee's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew Martha had sold that flour to the saloon keeper yesterday, but no one would believe her word against Martha's. The street felt like a stage. Faces stared from doorways and windows. Some looked uncomfortable, others eager for entertainment. None offered help. Martha produced a wooden switch from behind her back, the same switch she'd used countless times before, but never in public. This was meant as a lesson for everyone. Let this be a warning about the consequences of theft. The first blow landed across Clara Mee's shoulders. Pain exploded down her spine, but she refused to cry out. The second strike hit her arms as she tried to shield herself. The third caught her across the back of her legs. "Please stop," she whispered. Martha raised the switch again. Clara Mee closed her eyes, bracing for another blow that would never come. Hoofbeats thundered down the main street. A lone rider approached, his horse kicking up clouds of dust. The man sat tall in his saddle despite his weathered appearance. His eyes were hard as flint, but something deeper lurked beneath the surface. The crowd fell silent. Even Martha lowered her weapon. The stranger's gaze moved from Martha to Clara Mee, taking in the scene with calm assessment. When he spoke, his voice carried quiet authority that made everyone listen. "Don't hurt her. Sell her to me." The stranger's words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Martha's eyes widened, then narrowed with calculation. Money always spoke louder than cruelty in her world. "She's worth $50, Martha said, testing the waters. The cowboy reached into his coat without hesitation. Gold coins clinked as they hit Martha's palm. More money than Clara Mee had ever seen. "Done." Martha pocketed the coins with unseemly haste. Clara Mee felt her world shift beneath her feet. Sold like livestock, traded like property. Her legs trembled as the reality sank in. The stranger dismounted and approached slowly. His movements held no threat, but Clara Mee flinched anyway. 15 years of abuse had taught her to expect pain from every outstretched hand. "Easy now, I'm not going to hurt you." When his fingers touched hers to help her stand, Clara Mee's world exploded. Images crashed through her mind with stunning clarity. A young girl with pigtails laughing in a meadow. The same girl pale and still in a small wooden coffin. Overwhelming grief that nearly brought him to his knees. The stranger's daughter, dead from fever 3 winters ago. His heart shattered beyond repair, carrying guilt that ate at him like acid. But underneath the pain, Clara Mee felt something else. Genuine kindness. A desperate need to protect someone, anyone, the way he'd failed to protect his own child. She gasped and stumbled backward. The visions had never been this clear, this detailed. Usually they came in fragments, confusing flashes she couldn't understand. This time she saw everything. "You all right, miss?" Clara Mee stared at him with new eyes. This man meant no harm. For the first time in her life, someone had intervened not to hurt her but to help her. The realization nearly knocked her breathless. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Everything she thought she knew about herself was crumbling. The fits Martha called devil's work weren't punishment. They were something else entirely. The stranger introduced himself as Jonah's Creed. He led her to the boarding house and paid for a room with meals included. Clara Mee sat on the narrow bed, afraid to touch anything. Afraid this kindness was another cruel dream. "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." That night, Clara Mee lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with possibilities she'd never dared consider. What if the visions meant something? What if they weren't random attacks but glimpses of truth? Over the following days, Jonas treated her with careful respect. He bought her new clothes, proper food, books to read. Clara Mee devoured everything hungrily. Her mind, starved for so long, absorbed knowledge like dry earth soaking up rain. "You learn fast," Jonas observed as she worked through a primer. Martha said reading would give me ideas above my station. What do you think about that? Clara me considered carefully. I think Martha was afraid of what I might learn. Jonas smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen directed at her in years. As days passed, Clara me began testing her strange ability. When the boarding house owner, Mrs. Kowalski, brought meals, Clara me would brush her hand casually. Images of the woman's homeland flooded through her. Memories of family left behind, hope for children who might visit someday. The saloon keeper's daughter came crying about her father's drinking. Clara me took her hand gently and saw the truth. The man wasn't drinking from weakness but from shame. His business was failing, and he felt like a failure as a father. Tell him you're proud of him, Clara me suggested. Tell him you know he's doing his best. The girl looked puzzled but followed the advice. Within a week, father and daughter had reconciled, and the man had found new investors for his struggling business. Word spread quietly through Bitter Creek. People began seeking Clara Mee's counsel, calling it intuition or wisdom beyond her years. She helped Mrs. Patterson locate her late husband's savings by touching the widow's gloves and seeing where the money was hidden. She prevented a barn fire by warning the distracted blacksmith after sensing his grief through a handshake. But not everyone welcomed her growing influence. Martha watched from across the street with burning hatred. Banker Silas Webb saw Clara Mee's insights as threats to his shady dealings. Whispers began following her through town. Unnatural, some said. Witchcraft, others murmured. Clara Mee learned to ignore the talk. For the first time in her life, people looked at her with respect instead of contempt. Children smiled when she passed. Adults sought her advice. She was becoming someone who mattered. The test came when a federal marshal arrived investigating a missing person case. His partner had vanished while tracking stolen cattle. The man was desperate, running out of leads. Martha saw her opportunity. She approached the marshal with poison in her voice. "That girl's been telling fortunes, claiming she can see things. It's devil's work, I tell you." The marshal, a practical man named Hayes, decided to investigate. He found Clara Mee helping Jonas repair a fence behind the boarding house. "Miss, I hear you have special insight into things." Clara Mee felt the familiar flutter of fear, but Jonas stood beside her, steady and reassuring. She'd seen his faith in her through their brief touches. It gave her strength. "I can sometimes sense things about people. My partner's been missing for days. If you're truly gifted, help me find him." Clara Mee hesitated, then extended her hand. Marshal Hayes clasped it firmly. Images crashed through her consciousness. A narrow canyon, a collapsed mine shaft, a man trapped but alive calling weakly for help. East Canyon past Miller's Creek, the old silver mine. "He's hurt but breathing." Hayes stared at her with shock and suspicion, but desperate times called for desperate measures. He organized a rescue party immediately. They found the marshal's partner exactly where Clara Mee had described. Trapped for 3 days, barely conscious but alive. As they carried the injured man to safety, the crowd that had gathered looked at Clara Mee with new eyes, some with wonder, others with fear. Her gift was no longer secret. The real test had just begun. The rescue changed everything. Word of Clara Mee's gift spread beyond Bitter Creek like wildfire across dry grass. Some called her blessed. Others whispered darker words. Martha's fury burned hotter each day. She watched from her store window as people sought Clara Mee's counsel. Respected citizens treating the girl she'd beaten like furniture now hung on her every word. The natural order had turned upside down. Jonas noticed the hostile stares following them through town. He'd seen this pattern before in other places. Fear bred violence faster than kindness bred acceptance. "Maybe we should move on," he suggested one evening. Clara Mee shook her head. "Running won't solve anything. Besides, these people need help." Her confidence amazed him. The trembling girl he'd rescued had become a young woman who stood tall despite the whispers. But Jonas carried his own shadows, and they were catching up fast. The wanted posters appeared on a Tuesday morning. Jonas's face stared back from every hitching post and store window. $5,000 reward for the murder of 3 Texas Rangers, dead or alive. Clara Mee found him burning one of the notices behind the boarding house. "They're lies," she said simply. Jonas looked up sharply. "How do you know that?" "I've touched things that belong to you. Your gun, your saddle, I see flashes of truth. You were protecting someone, not murdering anyone." Her faith in him meant everything. But faith wouldn't stop bullets or change the past. Martha saw opportunity in the wanted posters. She cornered Marshal Hayes outside the sheriff's office, her voice dripping false concern. "That man has been filling Clara Mee's head with nonsense, teaching her to claim supernatural powers. It's corrupting her soul." Hayes studied the poster in his hands. "This shows him as a wanted murderer." "Exactly. And that girl is under his influence. She needs proper guidance away from his criminal ways." Martha's plan crystallized. Get rid of Jonas, reclaim Clara Mee, restore the natural order where she held power. But Clara Mee sensed the danger gathering like storm clouds. When she touched the boarding house door handle that evening, visions of rough men on horseback flooded her mind. Bounty hunters riding hard toward Bitter Creek. Martha's face twisted with satisfaction as she pointed them toward Jonas. "We have to leave tonight," Clara Mee told him. Jonas shook his head. "I won't run anymore. I'm tired of being hunted for crimes I didn't commit. Then we fight back with truth." Clara Mee had been thinking about her gift differently lately, not as random visions but as a tool for uncovering secrets. Martha had always been afraid of her touching things. What if there was a reason beyond simple cruelty? That night, while Martha attended prayer meeting, Clara Mee and Jonas slipped into the general store. Clara Mee moved through the familiar space with new purpose. She touched Martha's desk, her chair, her personal belongings. The first vision hit her like a physical blow. A younger Martha standing over 2 bodies. A black man and woman, well-dressed and prosperous, lying still in their own parlor. Blood on Martha's hands and madness in her eyes. Clara Mee gasped and stumbled. Jonas caught her arm. "What did you see?" "Murder. Martha killed my parents." The second vision came when she touched a hidden strongbox behind the counter. Legal documents bearing official seals. Property deeds signed in Martha's shaking hand. Bank records showing transfers of substantial wealth. "She's been living on my family's money. The house, the store, everything belongs to me." Jonas examined the papers by lamplight. His expression grew darker with each page. "Your parents owned 3,000 acres of prime farmland. They had money in banks from here to San Antonio. Martha forged documents claiming to be your legal guardian after their deaths." Clara Mee sank into Martha's chair, overwhelmed. "She kidnapped me to steal my inheritance and kept you as a servant to maintain the illusion. If you'd grown up educated and confident, people might have asked questions." The final piece fell into place when Clara Mee touched Martha's Bible. Hidden inside the hollowed pages were letters from lawyers, bankers, and land agents, all addressed to Martha but concerning Clara Mee's family estate. "She's been managing my parents' assets for 15 years, living off their wealth while making me scrub floors." Jonas gathered the evidence carefully. "This proves everything. Your real identity, the murders, the fraud. But Martha's not just going to confess. She'll fight to protect her secrets." As if summoned by their words, hoofbeats thundered down the main street. The bounty hunters had arrived earlier than expected. Through the store window, Clara Mee watched 3 hard men dismount outside the sheriff's office. Martha emerged from the church to greet them like old friends. She planned this perfectly, Clara Mee realized. Get you arrested or killed, then claim I'm disturbed by grief. Ship me off somewhere remote where I can't tell anyone the truth. Jonas checked his pistol. We need Marshal Hayes as a witness. He's the only federal authority here. No, we need the whole town to see. Martha's power comes from people believing her lies. When they learn the truth, that power disappears. Clara Mee had spent 15 years invisible and voiceless. Tomorrow, in the same street where Martha had beaten her, she would finally speak the truth that would shatter everything. The bounty hunters had come for Jonas, but they had no idea they were walking into a trap set by the girl they dismissed as worthless. Dawn would bring justice, or it would bring death. Either way, the lies would finally end. Dawn broke gray and cold over Bitter Creek. Clara Mee stood in the same street where Martha had beaten her weeks ago. This time, she held her head high. The bounty hunters emerged from the hotel, spurs jingling against wooden sidewalks. 3 men with hard eyes and harder hearts. They tracked Jonah's creed across 2 territories for the reward money. Marshal Hayes waited near the sheriff's office, hand resting on his gun. The federal lawman had agreed to witness whatever was about to unfold. Clara Mee's rescue of his partner had earned her that much. Martha appeared from the general store, her face a mask of righteous satisfaction. She'd waited 15 years for this moment. Justice for the uppity girl who dared rise above her station. "There's your murderer," Martha called out, pointing at Jonah's. The lead bounty hunter stepped forward. His name was Cobb, and killing came easier to him than breathing. He'd planned to take Jonah's dead rather than risk a fight. Jonah's creed: "You're wanted for the murder of 3 Texas Rangers." Jonah stood calmly beside Clara Mee. "I never killed any Rangers. Prove it in court if you live that long." Cobb's hand moved toward his gun. Clara Mee stepped between them. "Before you do anything permanent, Marshal Hayes should see this." She produced the documents from Martha's strongbox. Legal papers that told a story of murder and theft spanning decades. "These prove Martha Hensley killed my parents and stole their fortune. She's been living on blood money while keeping me as a slave." Martha's face went white, then red with rage. "Lies," the girl's disturbed. "She's been making up stories since that drifter filled her head with nonsense." "Then you won't mind if Marshal Hayes examines the evidence." Hayes took the papers with growing interest. Property deeds, bank records, forged guardianship documents. Each page painted a clearer picture of elaborate fraud. "These documents show the Washingtons owned substantial property. They name Clara Mee Washington as sole heir." "Washington?" Martha's voice cracked. "Her name is Clara Mee Johnson. She's nobody special. According to these records, her parents were Samuel and Rebecca Washington, prosperous landowners who died under suspicious circumstances 15 years ago." The crowd that had gathered murmured with shock. Clara Mee Washington, not some nameless orphan, but the daughter of one of the territory's wealthiest black families. Cobb grew impatient. "This doesn't change anything. Creed's still wanted for murder." Clara Mee turned to him with steady eyes. "Would you like to know who really killed those Rangers?" She extended her hand toward Cobb. He jerked backward as if she'd offered him a snake. "I don't truck with witchcraft." "Then touch this instead." Clara Mee produced Jonas's badge from her pocket, the tin star he'd worn as a Texas Ranger before his world collapsed. She pressed it into Marshal Hayes's palm. "See the truth for yourself." Hayes felt nothing but cold metal, but Clara Mee's gift worked differently now. She touched his hand while he held the badge, using him as a conduit to share her vision. Images flooded Hayes's mind. Jonah's arriving at a remote cabin to investigate reports of Ranger corruption. Finding his 3 colleagues already dead, killed by the real criminals they'd been tracking. Gunmen emerging from the shadows to frame Jonah's for the murders. Hayes gasped and dropped the badge. "Good Lord. You saw it too, didn't you?" Clara Mee asked. "The truth about what really happened." Hayes nodded slowly. Creed was set up. The real killers murdered his fellow Rangers and left evidence pointing to him. Cobb's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "That's impossible. You can't see things that happened in the past." "She can," said Mrs. Patterson from the crowd. "She found my husband's hidden money the same way." "Help me locate that missing marshal too," added the blacksmith. More voices joined in. People Clara Mee had helped with her gift stood up for her now. The tide of public opinion was turning. Martha saw her carefully constructed world crumbling. "She's a fraud, a witch. Don't let her bewitch you all." "The only fraud here is you," Clara Mee said quietly. She walked to Martha and grasped her wrist before the older woman could pull away. The final vision crashed through both their minds like thunder. Martha as a young woman, consumed with jealousy over the Washington success, poisoning their evening meal, then watching them die in agony, taking their infant daughter to raise as a servant, living off their wealth while telling everyone she was performing charity. Martha screamed and tried to break free, but Clara Me held firm. "Tell them what you did to my parents. I gave you a home, fed you, clothed you. You murdered them and stole everything that belonged to me." The crowd pressed closer, hungry for truth. Martha looked around desperately, seeing only hostile faces where once she'd commanded respect. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. Marshal Hayes stepped forward with iron shackles. "Martha Hensley, you're under arrest for murder and fraud." Cobb and his men found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The federal marshal's word carried more weight than any bounty poster. "Creed's been cleared of all charges," Hayes announced. "These men have no legal authority here." The bounty hunters retreated, grumbling about wasted time and lost rewards. Clara Me watched them go without satisfaction. Justice felt different than she'd expected. Quieter, more complete. As Martha was led away in chains, she looked back at Clara Me with something resembling regret. "I'm sorry," Clara Me called after her. Martha stumbled, shocked by the unexpected mercy. 6 months later, Clara Me stood in the same street once more. This time she wore a teacher's dress and held lesson plans for her new school. Children of every color waited for her inside, eager to learn. Jonas had accepted the position of town sheriff. His badge gleamed in the morning sun as he made his rounds, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The school bell rang, calling students to class. Clara Me smiled and headed inside, ready to share knowledge instead of hiding from it. She'd found her true gift at last. Not just seeing truth, but teaching others to recognize it for themselves. In Bitter Creek, the age of lies had ended. The age of truth had just begun. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.